Welcome to the second portion of today's general session. I'm Kim LaFleur, proudly hailing from Plimpton, Massachusetts. My husband Jeff and I, along with sons Cameron and Logan, own Mayflower Cranberries. In addition, I am the state advisor and program director for the Massachusetts FFA Association. I've been a supervisor for the Plymouth County Conservation District since 2004, where I currently serve as board chair. The last year has certainly been like no other in my lifetime. The challenges created by the pandemic have forced us to reimagine many facets of our daily lives. It's easy to get caught up and dwell on the things that we can't do right now. However, let's just think for a minute about what this last year has given us. This year's given us connection. Technology has allowed us to stay connected, even when we're apart. Who would have thought we'd all become mini experts on Zoom meetings? It sparked creativity. Can't hold an in-person event? Switch it up to virtual and reach more people. It's also given us a sense of community. I've seen some of the most inspiring acts of humanity as time and time again, people rise up to help a neighbor in need. Now, I won't pretend for a minute that a virtual meeting can take the place of a face-to-face one. Zoom calls can't take the place for that one-on-one conversation that we desire. What they can do, though, is give us opportunity. Author Tom Peters has said, if a window of opportunity appears, don't pull down the shade. There has never been a better opportunity to have our voices magnified. Alternative meeting and communication platforms can allow us to connect with new and diverse audiences. When we get back to on-site meetings and events, we just may find that our circle of influence is that much larger. Last year, NACD's Board of Directors passed a statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which called on NACD and our members to examine DEI issues in conservation. The board asked for the creation of a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force, and I was asked by President Tim Palmer to serve as chair. Over the past several months, our task force has been meeting as a group weekly to have difficult conversations and identify where and how we could be better. We've begun a lot of work to make our organization more inclusive, tackling the challenging issues and challenging ourselves to improve our organization and make it more equitable, to reach our underserved and underrepresented audiences, and to better serve all of our conservation districts and in turn, all of their employees, board members, and cooperators. Our work is far from over, but I'm thankful to have been part of the process so far and that we're having these conversations on a national scale. This morning, we'll be hearing from a panel on DEI and how we can improve our impact, our reach, and our legacy. We'll also hear from United States Forest Chief Vicki Christensen. Vicki Christensen serves as Chief of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Forest Service, leading a workforce of more than 28,000 permanent employees to steward 193 million acres of national forests and grasslands, support the world's largest forestry research organization, and work with states, tribes, and others to sustain all forests so that they can benefit all citizens today and in the future. Over her 39-year career, she has accumulated a wealth of experience in natural resource and wildland fire management. Her commitment to the core values of the Forest Service, which are conservation, service, interdependence, diversity, and safety, is evident in the priorities she sets for the agency. As chief, Vicki is leading agency efforts to improve the conditions of America's forests and grasslands by modernizing how we do business to increase active forest management and deliver landscape conservation through shared stewardship with local, state, and national partners and tribes. Vicki's focus on relationships inside and outside the agency is reflected in the Forest Service's dedication to caring for the land, communities, and the people they serve. Vicki joined the Forest Service in 2010 as the Deputy Director of Fire and Aviation Management. Prior to serving as Chief, she worked as Deputy Chief for the state and private forestry. Before joining the Forest Service, she served as the Arizona State Forester and Director of the Arizona Division of Forestry. She had previously served as the Washington State Forester, the culmination of a 26-year career with the Washington State Department of Natural Resources. With that, Chief, I'll turn things over to you.
Hi, it's just a great pleasure to have the opportunity to address the National Association of Conservation Districts annual meeting. I'm just sorry that we couldn't do this in person. You know, we share so much in common with conservation districts here at the Forest Service through our common roots in conservation. Our mission at the Forest Service is to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of the nation's forests and grasslands to meet the needs of present and future generations. I know I'm biased, but it's a great mission and one that I've been a part of my entire career, including as a state forester, long before I actually worked for the Forest Service. So we are clearly anchored in our mission through the stewardship and the management of the 193 million acres of our national forests and grasslands. But our mission goes way beyond that. We have tools at the national level to sustain all of America's forests. Our state and private forestry mission area gives us broad authorities to sustain the nation's forest, all 766 million acres. And we do that not clearly on our own, it's with and through others, including partners like the conservation districts. The work we do intersects with conservation districts, and the work you do helps all of sustainable forest management, clearly, specifically on private lands. So in many ways, the core of what we do is connecting people to the land. Our role in the story of conservation is to show how much nature matters to the people that we serve. Every one of us needs nature to live. Nature provides the flow of services and benefits that we all enjoy. So it's our duty as conservationists to take care of the natural resources together. We say at the Forest Service, nature matters, nature provides, and we can make it last for everyone if we take care of it together. And conservation districts play a really important role for the conservation of these natural resources. So the Joint Forestry National Team, the Forest Service, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, the National Association of State Foresters, and NACD coordinate and leverage the assistance for private landowners. And NACD has been a leader for this joint forestry team, and we deeply appreciate your enthusiasm and your support. You know, through the joint forestry team, we are reaching out together to our underserved communities. Diversity is a core value for the Forest Service, and we want to be fully inclusive of all Americans. The Joint Forestry Team is working on outreach to underserved communities by collecting and sharing best outreach practices. We look forward to using the techniques that work best for our own cooperative forestry programs, and we're confident that our partner organizations will as well. You know, we all recognize the importance of data sharing and spatial analysis, and I really want to thank you for encouraging us to streamline our landowner assistance through data sharing together with our federal partner, the NRCS. You know, good customer service is a priority for the Forest Service, and we are working together as one USDA to understand the impacts of federal assistance and to make data-informed decisions to benefit sustainable forest management on private working lands. Working together with you helps us strengthen our landowner assistance at the local, the state, and the national levels. We really, really thank you for your help and your support. A big challenging area, folks, is wildland fire in this nation. You know, we need your help in wildland fire management. Our wildland fire system, and that's the ecological, the environmental, the economic, the cultural parts of all of wildland fire, is really changing before our very eyes. And last year, the COVID pandemic challenged the way we manage wildland fire. We learned as we went, adapting our management accordingly. And we did our best, and we took away lessons learned for years to come. COVID compounded a very difficult fire year based on changes to the wildland fire system over the last 20 years. The 2017 and 2018 fire years in California exemplified some of these changes, which we saw again this past year. Last year, we had extreme fire weather across much of the West, record-shattering heat, tinder dry fuels, stalled weather fronts, hot and dry winds, and dry lightning busts in unheard of places. All of it combined to start thousands of fires with phenomenal rates of spread. We had record mega fires and record rates of spread across the entire regions from the West Coast to the Central Rockies. And mega fires roared across vast landscapes and through wildland urban interface, WUI communities. Areas normally too wet to burn went up in flames, like the west side of the Cascades, particularly in Oregon. These changes to our wildland fire system are rooted in extraordinary drought, in legacy fuel buildups, in legacy of fire exclusion compounded by a changing climate, in homes spreading into fire-prone landscapes, and as we have seen in recent years, in the volatility of the WUI fuels themselves. Just think of the campfire in California, where thousands of homes burned. Yet through it all, there are things we can do, folks. We really need to focus on the factors in the wildland fire system that we can control, such as the quality of our relationships. Under the National Cohesive Strategy for Wildland Fire Management, we have 3 overarching goals, and we are committed to doing our part at the Forest Service. Our part to work with our partners to develop a shared risk-based response to wildfire. Yes, even in a pandemic. Our part to accelerate the treatment of landscapes for greater resilience. And our part to help communities become more fire adapted. And we can do our part, but we also need your help and your support. Since 2008, California has had a new building code that includes many fire-wise specifications for constructing new homes. And many other states have similar initiatives. You know, after the Camp Fire, a study was done, and the study found that homes built after 2008 were far more likely to survive the fire than the older homes built before. So FireWise works. And I know personally that conservation districts are uniquely positioned to help. In my experience, particularly in Washington State, where I come from, we had conservation districts that really connected and focused as being the catalyst around FireWise communities, because they are you are a part of those communities. The State Department of Natural Resources helped to boost the conservation districts, but you are in those communities, in areas where the wildland-urban interface was so significant. So together with the states, the Forest Service can work with you to make good things happen through our collective shared investments. So shared stewardship, it really is key, folks, and shared stewardship is a priority for the Forest Service. Wildfire and really the benefits that flow from natural resources, they know no boundaries. We are all in this together, and not one of us, individually or as an organization, can succeed alone, whether it's at the local, the state, or the national level. We must join together to ramp up the scale of our work to match the scale of the threat. And we can do that if we work together across these shared landscapes, sharing the decision space amongst all stakeholders. And that clearly includes the conservation districts. Our treatments work if we place them in the right place and at the right scale. We have success stories all over the country where a fire has dropped to the ground to become a ground fire when it reached a treated area. Firefighters then can control the fire before it burns into communities. We have a whole range of tools and authorities in place for cross-boundary partnerships to mitigate wildfire risks across shared landscapes. We just need to do the right work at the right scale. So through these shared stewardship agreements, we can get there. The states have forest action plans that can serve to coordinate fuels and forest health treatments across planning areas that span our jurisdictional boundaries. The states are also uniquely positioned to convene stakeholders across entire firesheds to evaluate the wildland fire environment, to agree on cross-jurisdictional planning areas, and to set priorities for investments that will bring the most bang for the buck. For that, we need your help. For the Forest Service, it's really not about federal dominance. It's about sharing decision space, knowing what we're good at. And sharing decision space is about prioritizing our resources based on the outcomes we all want. You know, the state conservation commissions have a strong voice, and we want them to reach out to their state forestry organizations, to their natural resource directors for the governor's office, and say, we have a role to play too. Once that happens, once we can bring all stakeholders together across broad landscapes, once we can come to some agreements on the broad outcomes we all want, we can really make a difference. We can use tools like scenario planning and our new Fireshed Registry to assess fire risk across broad landscapes, to project the scenarios for various management actions, and to set priorities for investing in the right management activities at the right scale in the right places. For conservation to succeed, we're all in this together. We need your help and your support in all of these areas and more. Our cooperative forestry programs are growing strong thanks to the Joint Forestry Team and thanks to our federal, state, and local partnerships and the role that conservation districts play in all of them. You know, these programs all have compelling conservation stories to tell. And that brings me to my final point, the point I made at the outset of my remarks: connecting people to the land. And conservation districts, you're right in the center of all of that. You're critically important in connecting people to the land. With your help, we can show people in our local communities how nature supports everything they do, how they can improve their lives by connecting to the land around them. They can do that by getting outdoors, and we've seen that across the board during this pandemic. The importance and value of people getting outdoors when they couldn't get to other places. We can connect people by learning about the wildland fire system and how they can improve it, and by getting involved in making the decisions we need to really improve the conditions on the ground. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to join your annual meeting, albeit virtually. Thank you for the work that you do, for the commitments you have, and the willingness to really work hard together, because the natural resource conservation of our work is so very important. I really look forward to continuing our partnership for many generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Christensen. Up next, we'll start our panel discussion featuring representatives who champion diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our moderator is Dale Threatt-Taylor, Executive Director for the Nature Conservancy in South Carolina. Dale Threatt-Taylor is the Executive Director of the Nature Conservancy South Carolina chapter. He received a Bachelor of Science in Conservation from North Carolina State University and a Master of Environmental Management from Duke University in 2011. In 2012, she was selected as one of 30 agriculturalists in North Carolina identified to participate in the Agricultural Leadership Development Program at North Carolina State University. Her career began as a soil conservationist with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service and later joined the Wake Soil and Water Conservation District. In 2008, she was selected as the District Director of Wake SWCD and Wake County Soil and Water Conservation Department. Her new role as Executive Director for TNC-SC has provided the opportunity to build new relationships between soil conservationists and environmentalists across the nation. She also serves on TNC's North American Agriculture Committee. Dale's conservation environmental leadership includes service on many national, state, and local boards and committees. On August 1st, 2020, Dale made history when elected to serve as the chair of the Soil and Water Conservation Society's National Board of Directors. Having received many awards throughout her career, one caught her by surprise: the Order of the Longleaf Pine from North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper for her dedicated work in conservation. Dale wants everyone to understand that locally led conservation begins with an individual, and together, our conservation work is so important in protecting the land and water on which all life depends. Dale, welcome to NACD's annual meeting. I'm going to turn things over to you and our panelists for this important and needed conversation.
Well, good morning, and thank you for that introduction. Now, in today's panel discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion in conservation, we're going to tackle a number of topics that we hope will help conference attendees as you evaluate your own diversity, equity, and inclusion practices in your conservation districts or your organizations. So now joining me for this panel are three distinguished colleagues. Now, by no means, I want to take note that by no means the panel is representative of all minority groups. Diversity encompasses a lot of variables, not only gender and race, but think about geography, think about federal representation, funding, think about age, even terrain where people live, maybe even access to water and rainfall, as well as, all kind of programs. So our hope today is not to speak for others, but we're going to bring some insight to viewers on how to ensure that you and we are providing opportunities to better our access and representation in all of our organizations. What's the best way to serve our communities? Now, so with that being said, I'm going to introduce our panelists. We've got a lot to talk about today. I'm not going to read their bios. It is in the program. It's on the website. So make sure you go and learn more about them and the programs and connect, okay? Our three panelists are Janie Hipp. She is the CEO of the Native American Agriculture Fund. Michael O'Gorman is the founder and Chief Agriculture Officer of the Farmer Veteran Coalition. And Victor Harris, he's the publisher and editor of Minority Landowner Magazine, which, by the way, I'm sorry, going to put a plug in, is celebrating its 15th year in 2021. And I subscribe to the magazine, and I encourage you to do so too. It's fabulous. So thank you for all your time. So let's begin. Our first question is for Victor. So Victor, through your magazine, you've been profiling the challenges and success of minority farmers for more than 15 years. Are there any stories that stick out in your mind that you could tell us about one of them?
Well, thanks for having me. We've had a lot of great stories over the 15 years, and there really isn't one that stands out that I can think of at this moment. But there is a conversation I had with a farmer that I'll always remember. We were at one of our annual conferences in Texas a few years back. And the design of the conference is to have a couple of days of indoor classroom presentations. And then we have at least a half a day where we go out into the field and we do farm tours. So we were out on one of the farms on the tour, and the farmer was talking about her operation. And she was describing how she got started and what her goals were, what her vision was for her operation. And she talked about some of the practices that she'd implemented. And she was really excited about how the farm had come along. And there was a farmer from another state who came up to me at this time, and he said that he had always wondered whether or not he was doing the right things, whether or not his vision was realistic, and whether or not he was making the right decisions as he worked his farm and designed the future for his farm. And he said, being at that conference and being out on that tour and listening to that farmer talk about her operation, he said, she's doing all the things that I want to do. And he said that listening to her, it validated what I'm trying to accomplish on my farm. And when he said that word validated, I just froze, I got chills. And I've been doing this, as you say, for 15 years, but I don't consider myself to be a genius business person or a genius publisher. I have those moments just like he did where I wake up and wonder, am I moving in the right direction? Am I reaching the farmers and landowners that we need to reach? Are we being of assistance to those farmers to help them realize their dreams? And so when he told me that he felt validated by listening to that farmer, I felt validated listening to him. So I don't have a story that we wrote and published in the magazine, but that conversation with that farmer, it's something that stuck with me and I'll always remember it.
Oh, wow, that's fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, all of us here on the panel have had a long history of a career, and that validation you just shared, it feels good for all of us. So thank you so much. In fact, a common challenge that we've all observed in getting to that next generation and getting them involved in our work, we share in that. So Victor, how does your organization, with all the work that you've done across the country, and I know you've worked all across the country in workshops and everything, how do you suggest we engage young people and get them to take part or recruit them in a career in agriculture and natural resource conservation?
Okay, that is a very good question. And there are a lot of different things that we can do, and I'm going to take that question into two parts. So part one, how do we reach young people? I started my career the first 20 years with state forestry agencies in Virginia and North Carolina. Every state forestry agency has some type of fire prevention program. And usually they'll have Smokey Bear, where they take Smokey into the elementary schools and they talk about fire prevention. So as a conservation district, maybe some of you are doing this, but if you're not, how about contacting your local state forestry agency within your county, find out when they're doing those fire prevention programs, and then offer to help them with their fire prevention programs. You get a chance to talk about conservation while you're there. There are also scouts, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and they're out trying to earn conservation badges, stewardship badges, environmental badges. So identify your local scouts and again, offer to help them earn those badges. So that's part one. Part two, how do we diversify our workforce? I think that's what that question is all about. And again, a lot of different options, but I'm going to focus on one, and that's scholarships. There are minority serving institutions all over the country, and their big four categories are historically Black colleges and universities. You've probably heard the term HBCU. And some of these HBCUs are land grant institutions, and land grant means that they have an agricultural foundation. There are also Hispanic serving institutions. There are tribal colleges and universities, and there are Asian American and Pacific Islander serving universities. So do the homework and research within your state to identify where these universities are. They're going to have a pretty good percentage of minority population or student enrollment. Do the homework to find out where they are, and ideally find one that has an environmental, an agricultural, or conservation or natural resources degree program. And contact them and say, we want to start a scholarship. I'm going to use North Carolina as an example real quickly. North Carolina has 100 counties. And that doesn't mean that all 100 counties have their own independent conservation districts. Some of them may overlap. But for quick math, let's say there are 100 of them. So if you collectively say, we're going to raise $1,000 to start a scholarship for these minority serving institutions, just pick one. And then if we were in normal times, I would say, get $10 out of your coffee fund. But since we're not in normal times, you may not be in the office, then just between the employees, say we're going to pitch in $1 and we're going to come up with $10 one time a year. And if all 100 counties do that, now you have a $1,000 scholarship. I have a scholarship at Tuskegee University. It's for students in the College of Agriculture, Environment, and Nutrition Sciences. And as I've had a chance to go down to the awards program, every spring they have an awards program for students across campus who are receiving scholarships. I've noticed that the student who's receiving $25 or $50 scholarship, they are as dressed up and walking down the aisle just as proudly as that student who's getting $1,000 or $2,000. And so every dollar will make a difference. Last thing I would say is you may not end up hiring that student. We started from part one, how do we get them interested? In part two, they're already interested, they're in college, they're majoring in these programs. So let's help them graduate. So you may not think that's a whole lot of money, but a lot of these students are receiving some type of financial aid, and they may not end up working for you, but they will end up working in your profession, and that's going to help diversify your profession.
Oh, that's totally excellent. That's just excellent. First of all, there isn't a conservation district out there that doesn't work with what we used to call in the North Carolina our big brothers in forestry. So that was great. And also the excuse that, well, we don't know where to find a diverse recruiting, as though you've never heard of historically Black colleges and universities. So yeah, no more with the excuses. So very excellent. I love the scholarship idea. That was fabulous. Speaking of scholarship and funding and money, so let's talk about funding. Janie, with your organization, the Native American Agriculture Fund, it was created as a charitable trust to provide grants and support of Native American communities. Can you talk about challenges you face, especially in terms of funding or awarding funding?
Dale, let me start by sharing with the audience exactly where we came from. The Native American Agriculture Fund actually came out of the settlement of a really long lawsuit against USDA that was in the courts for 20 years. And we emerged out of that settlement. And so we started as a charitable trust with around $260 million. So our challenge has not been how do you gather up funds, because we were born with a pretty significant amount of funding. But the trust agreement that created us will not allow us to actually gather any more funding towards us, but we can partner with all sorts of organizations all around the country who are interested in working with tribal governments or Native farmers and ranchers or Native landowners. And the sole purpose for the Native American Agriculture Fund is to really drive into the success of Native farmers and ranchers. And one of the things that we do is we do an annual grant making process. And we have not been around that long. We actually started in July of 2018. We got our original funding in December of 2018. And since that time, and keep in mind, we just began 2021, throughout 2019 and 2020, we did 3 different grant making cycles, and we've already put $28 million out there in Indian country. And, you know, a lot of folks, sometimes I have to back up and I have to let people know what Indian country is. And Indian country is literally a technical term that's in federal law, but it stretches across over 35 states, and it makes up 57 million acres of land in the lower 48 and another 44 million acres in Alaska. And so I always, Dale, and I bet Victor does this too because he runs a magazine. The visual really matters. And, you know, whoever is listening to us today, start with a map. If you're thinking about working with the Native community, get a picture in your mind about where our land base is, right? And then there's all sorts of resources that our fund can help you unpack to try to really reach out to other folks who are Native, who are where you are, and pull them into what you're doing. We've got a lot to offer. Our fund is already funding conservation related work. The very first time we opened the door, we had conservation projects that walked right in, and we funded them. And we're constantly looking for new partners because it's really important work. We all know that, or we wouldn't be participating in this conference. And I just encourage people to think outside the box. Think about having new partners, because I think what you may find, both in really getting in with Victor's, you know, whatever Victor is working on and has been for 15 years, and what we're working on and have been for many, many years, you're going to find a whole lot of folks that are very anxious to be your new partners. They're very anxious to work alongside you that you may not fully understand, and understand that you have a responsibility and a role, I think, to learn and to be one of those lifelong learners. And part of learning is to learn who's sitting next to you, right? And how they can be a part of this conversation around conserving our lands, because it's so terribly important. This work is even more important now than it ever has been. So funding for us is not so much a problem in terms of how to gather it up. Ours is how to make sure that we can reach out and find other people who can come to us and help work alongside of us as leveraged partners. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And you know, everybody attending an NACD conference should know in conservation work. I know in my getting close to 30 years now of conservation work, it is about partnerships. And so you're right, we cannot work in a vacuum. And Michael, I bet you have probably could jump in probably to tell us a little bit, because y'all have a farmer veteran fellowship fund, right? And you provide assistance.
Yes, we do, Dale, and thanks for having me here today. And nice to be here with Victor and Jamie and participate in this discussion. Yes, the Farmer Veteran Fellowship Fund is kind of my favorite project of all the work we've done in FVC, and where we give small grants to veterans to help them move their farm forward. We've given out about $3 million. Most of the grants top out around $5,000, but we also work with Kubota Tractor, who gives us 5 tractors a year to give away, and they've moved into some larger and really great equipment to help veterans transition into agriculture. So it's we call it a fellowship fund because we like to partner it, not just with here's a piece of equipment, but we work with people like Farm Credit and groups that help give financial literacy training and business planning training to help the veterans come up with a business plan and a project and identify something that will help them move forward. So it's been a big boost to their project, to their efforts to become farmers. I know this year we're going to be partnering with Wounded Warrior Project and Tractor Supply Company, along with Kubota and Wounded Warrior and Tractor Supply. These companies are very, very interested in actually seeing a diversity amongst our members who actually receive the grant. So we want to, we're lucky working with veterans that the veteran community is very diverse to begin with. It's racially diverse and geographically diverse and urban, rural, and all across the country. And so that's one of the fun parts of working with this group, but we also want to increase that outreach to minority communities and make it, help bring diversity into our agricultural community.
Well, you bring up an important point too, that conservation districts need to remember. I've been talking about partnerships and, working with the Forest Service, working with, our partners. Janie, they're going to run to you now that they hear you say you have money, and they're going to go, oh, we didn't know. So now that we know and getting it, but let me tell you what this is Dale interjecting real quick. What it also comes down to is who's sitting in the chair. And I reference the chair. By the way, this chair right here is one of my perks for getting my new position at the Nature Conservancy. They actually bought me the chair. But I call it sitting in the chair because the chair is that decision maker. The buck stopped here. Who makes the decision? Who makes sure that in your conservation district that you don't stick with status quo of this is the way we've always done it, Michael, you've been around a long time. I know you started farming in 1970, almost as back to you haven't been, not quite, no, I know, but the point is though, that being in the chair and being a decision maker is that person that helps us say we will take up the initiative to make sure that we are diverse, that we are looking at equity, we are looking at inclusion, and of course I want to bring in environmental justice also. So I guess my question back to y'all is really that discussion on how we make sure not only are we diversified, but we're getting folks into leadership roles. And I say that as I sit here as the only, and it took till 2020, and of course it broke 2020 when it happened, that I'm the only Black state director for the Nature Conservancy for one of the 50 chapters of the 50 states, 2020, and it broke us, So my question is, how can we get, not only make sure that we're recruiting, we're getting folks on staff, we're getting vendors that we're selecting, our partners, and Michael, you mentioned businesses, but that we're also getting folks in leadership roles. What can conservationists do to better diversify in their recruitment, but also in their professional development? I serve with the Soil and Water Conservation Society, which is a professional development organization in conservation, and we need to do whatever it takes to encourage leadership in these positions also. Do y'all have any thoughts on that?
I do.
All right,
Go ahead,
Janie,
Michael.
you do, and then Michael. Go ahead, Janie.
Sometimes, Dale, we've got folks sitting right next to us or in the next county that we don't even know about. Let me give you an example. I have on my staff 2 native PhDs, both in the soil sciences. Now, if anybody who's out there wants to steal them from me, they're going to have a fight on their hands. But I believe that we keep going to the same conversations, and I think sometimes it's as simple as actually picking up the phone and doing some networking and understanding that there's a lot of diverse folks out there who are extremely well prepared to be a part of your leadership organization or working with your community, that whatever your initiatives are, we just have a tendency, I think, and sometimes the older we are, the worse it is, to always go back to the same people we go back to. And, you know, there is just so much to offer coming out of the HBCU community, coming out of the tribal college community, coming out of the large 1862s that do have diverse candidates who you could put in leadership positions tomorrow. I promise you they're there. And I think Dale, we need to do all a better job of working with each other to lift up those candidates who are prepared to go and be the Dale and be the Victor, right? And that counts for the veteran community as well. I've just seen it too many years in my work that folks are out there, but we tend to drive right past them. And I just think we can't do that anymore. We lose something every time we do that.
Very good. Michael, how do we do that and address underserved, underrepresented communities?
Well, yeah. I think, I mean, my career before starting FEC was 40 years on the production side of vegetable production and vegetable growing, and farm management specifically. And it's an enormous employee-rich part of agriculture that I farmed much of that, some of that, 11 years full-time in Mexico. I farmed most of the rest of it in California. I probably went 20 years in a row without speaking English in a field, or very rarely. I mean, it's the diversity in agriculture on the West Coast is there. It's not the diversity in who's in those positions, you know, but the diversity in understanding and the diversity in knowing how to farm and how to feed our country is there. And so I think there is that is a place where I think there's a big growth opportunity. When I see some other parts of the country, I mean, we have tremendous amount of wonderful African-American veteran farmers entering agriculture a lot across the Southeast and taking leadership positions there in North Carolina and some of our other states, and Tennessee and Arkansas and South Carolina in our chapters. That's a place that we can be. But I see other parts of the country that the diversity is not even there in the community. And so I'd like to see, I think that we need besides what Jamie says, that, you know, they're there, you know, just look next to you and they're already there. I think that that's true, but I also think that we need to have like a 30-year plan or a generational plan to get more diversity into rural America. Maybe we wouldn't have such this rural urban divide. And I have a project that I saw many years ago, and I thought, boy, I would like to see this across the country. I know Victor talked about scholarship. There was a program at Nebraska College of Technical Ag called the 100 Acres, 100 Cows. And they said they could take someone from the inner city in Chicago, scholarship them to that farm, and give them an animal science degree, and then place them on a farm with a rancher, place them on a ranch with a rancher, and give them some of the part of that herd will be theirs. And so they're getting, you know, I call it the 3 E's or 4 E's, and, you know, they're getting experience, they're getting education, they're building equity, and they're getting employment out of that deal. And let's give some urban people a chance to be part of our, you know, the land was kind of, it was a land rush, and it was divided up a long time ago. And let's give other people entryways, you know, into our rural communities.
That's great. I know we only have a minute or two left, and so as we wrap up, I want to give one good gem piece of advice that, you know, you've given this great, I hope, eye-opening advice to the conservation districts. To reach out and really expand from where they've been operating. But what would you say your biggest piece of advice you have for them to really focus and address, if it hasn't been mentioned already, something that they could do. And I want to include environmental justice, because conservation work and all the things you're saying also should be incorporate environmental justice. J should be part of DEI work, because that attaches to the land, and our conservation work is on the land. And so when there are injustices going on of land being taken, a land that's not being cared for, water that's being polluted and harmed, it comes back to our conservation districts in our work. But it should also be part of how we're changing. And having a plan, as you said, Michael, having a plan is an important part. But I need to let you answer that. So quickly, if y'all have any big piece of advice you would give. Victor, do you have a piece you want to start with?
Yeah, and I'll be brief. I think take a look around the room. When you have meetings, when we could get together for meetings, look around the room and see, do you have diversity? When you have a Zoom meeting now that you're not coming into the office, take a look around that computer screen and see who's participating, and do you have diversity? If you don't see diversity in the room, then you got a problem. You need to challenge yourself to do better. And when it comes to individuals who are going to come to your job, be a part of your organization with these technical degrees, conservation, environmental, forestry, natural resources, that's a small percentage of the population. The Forest Service is very good at this, and maybe Nrcs is as well, US Forest Service. They recruit beyond those technical positions, computer science, business, public relations, recruit beyond just those technical positions and find some way to diversify your organization. And even those non-technical positions, when they're sitting at the table, they're going to have some really good ideas about how you can increase your representation in those technical positions. So if you're sitting around the room, when we get back around the room and you don't see diversity, or we're on these Zoom meetings and you don't see diversity on the screen, then you got some work to do. And those are some of the ideas that I have as to how you can change. It's not going to be a fast process. I was the first Black forester in the history of the Virginia Department of Forestry when I graduated from college quite some time ago. And I would dare say that if you were to check with state forestry agencies today, I don't know, I haven't, but the representation may not be that different for forestry graduates. I hope it is, but it may not be. So it's a process, and don't give up just because you don't see immediate results. You have to stay with it. And the more people you bring around the table, the more ideas you're going to get in terms of how to improve your diversity within your organizations.
Great.
I want to add to that, and I also want to pick up on what Victor said earlier. We have to have a plan, and it has to be a multi-year plan. We can't do this 1 year at a time. We have to have a long vision, but we also, it's really imperative right now that we find and we support and we come up under and we make sure the next generation of young people are in this with us. And my greatest fear is that we're going to look up and we're going to not have the 20s and the 30 somethings. And I will tell you, the teens, we all know, if you're my age, I'm 65, we know that it took us this long to build a Dale or a Victor or a Michael or a Janie and everyone else who's on the conference. We owe it to our young people to find them, to nurture them, to support them, and to get them going off in the right foot, because we desperately need them to come up behind us. And you can do so. I know tons of African American and Native American students and Asian American, you name it, young people who would just love to have this as their career. But we only talk to people who are 5 years younger than us. I think we're at that moment that we've really got to replenish our ranks with young people and deliberately make that a diverse conversation. And that way, 20 years from now, we will be in a different place, but we're going to have to lean into it and make it happen. I love our young people and I depend on them and I know we can trust them.
I want somebody else in the chair. That's right. Go ahead, Michael.
I'll add one thing to this conversation, and that's that there is a lot of interest around young people wanting to become farmers. And but sometimes I think sometimes their goal of being a first generation farmer, I want farmland and I want a vertically integrated company, is not always realistic. And we need to give them other options, other ways, and show that it's exciting. You know, my career, I was a farm manager. Didn't file Schedule F. Technically, I wasn't a farmer, but I was a farmer. That's all I did. And it was grow food my whole life. And we need to show people the opportunities of employment, and that includes the conservation districts and these wonderful other career paths, and make them be as interesting and make them show that, you know, you can take one of these career paths to get into, get in and around land, and, you know, you can have some hogs and you could have some vegetables to sell. You know, you can become, you can get into the agricultural community and agricultural career through taking on one of these careers.
Oh, that's great. I'll just add by saying, get them in, but also provide professional development, invest in their training. It's just a lifelong learning. So make sure they get into professional organizations, network and train, and then coach and mentor them. I coach and mentor a lot of folks, and it feels so good because you're right, Janie. I do want somebody else in the chair. I'm not going to be here. I need to retire at some point on the beach. So yeah, definitely mentor and coach and encourage them along the way. Let them know also that this is a pay-in. People have this idea that they work in the government or if they work in conservation that they aren't going to get paid. Tell them they're going to get paid if they keep working. I know that matters to young people. It just does. I'm just keeping it real. I want to thank y'all so much. Your panelists, I know how busy you are. I know with everything going on in the world that there's so much is pulling and tugging on us, but you took the time to talk and provide your insight, provide your advice, provide hope for us that we can have move our conservation districts into the next generation. So thank you so much. We always want to advance locally led conservation, but we want to make sure it's for everyone. So thank you so much for that today. We thank everybody for joining our session today, and hope you enjoy the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale, and thanks to all our panelists this morning. Your insights resonate, and I'm sure we will all carry home lessons learned from your perspective. I'd now like to welcome to the stage Acting Deputy Undersecretary for Farm Production and Conservation, Kevin Norton. Kevin will be providing an NRCS update and served as Acting Chief for USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service until January 19th. Kevin Norton has served NRCS for 39 years. Since December 2018, he served as the Associate Chief for NRCS, providing direct support to NRCS Chief Nacd, who stepped down in August of 2020. Kevin provided oversight on the agency's programs, technology, and administrative operations, along with national direction and oversight for the agency's financial and technical assistance programs delivered through 4 deputy chief areas in support of over 3,000 state and field operations across the United States and territories. Kevin served for 12 years as the NRCS state conservationist in Louisiana. He began his NRCS career in 1981 as a range conservationist in Lawton, Oklahoma, after graduating from Oklahoma State University. His career spanned multiple agency organizational levels within Oklahoma prior to moving to Louisiana. He has also served in key positions and support roles for the agency and in support of producers and partners' adoption of delivery of voluntary field-based conservation. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Hello, and it is such an honor to be here with you today. I really cannot express how special this is for me. We are recording here on January the 14th, and as many of you are aware, you know, the inauguration will be happening on the 20th, and along with that will come the political appointments. that will flow into the department and our agency. We don't yet know the timing. We don't have an announcement to make at this point in time, but by the time we're having this meeting, we may very well have a new chief for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So I'm going to take this little bit of time while I have the opportunity to speak to you and just tell you how special y'all are to me, the National Association of Conservation Districts, and more importantly, those 3,000 conservation districts that are across the landscape of America. And if you'll indulge me a minute, I need to tell you a little bit of a story. This fellow on the screen here was me in 1977, and that is my state farmer photo for Oklahoma State Farmer designation back in that day. I was raised in an Anadarko agriculture setting. And quite honestly, I knew of conservation districts. In fact, Charlie Opitz and Elmer Manstrick, two individuals that were conservation district directors, were, in my view, at that time, giants in agriculture production in Caddo County, Oklahoma. And they were connected and alive within and living within that conservation district and making things happen. At that time, I will be honest with you, I thought I was going to be a farmer the rest of my life. And as you think about 1977 and then going to college and coming back, just a different and a difficult time to be moving into agriculture. I had an a vocational agriculture teacher, John Dawes, and he encouraged me to go to college. My family, we wanted to just, we were working class, we were labor jobs, and that's what I saw in front of me. And because he worked hard to get me a scholarship and get me into college, I was set up to become something a little bit more in life. In no way, shape, or form did I ever believe that starting with this agency, Soil Conservation Service, back in 1981, would lead me to a position of being a person leading the agency today for whatever period of time I had. And on that journey, as I went through my career, it was really the soil conservation districts there in Oklahoma and later in Louisiana that shaped me. Many of you know me as a champion of conservation districts and locally led conservation. That came from my growing up in Western Oklahoma, where these pictures are just a part of what we knew. I was on the banks of the Ouachita River. Those floods were real. They were a common occurrence in the history of my family. I remember growing up and continually hearing stories from my grandparents, my aunts and uncles about the Dust Bowl and the hard times that they face. So you hear those things growing up and conservation kind of comes to you. Well, it landed in my lap with the Lawton Field Office in the Comanche County Conservation District. James Eddie Phillips, a soil and water conservation supervisor, drew me out to his operation and worked with me on the passion around soil and water conservation districts, what they can do and how they can make a difference. And that continued on through my career. Giants like Ed Rohr from Harper County Conservation District, Hal Clark from Cimarron County Conservation District, all of those individuals were really critical to shaping my view of conservation in my formative years with the agency and the power of conservation districts. And I want to say, y'all have so much power. Every district that I was a part of, that I worked with throughout my career, those folks leaned into the issues that were there locally, and they adapted and adjusted, whether it was providing drip irrigation services, whether it was providing grass seed to help plant thousands of acres of grass. The conservation districts that I grew up in the 80s and 90s were just as aggressive and active as the conservation districts that came out of these generations of conservation in the history of our country. We're all in this together. You shape the way we believe, the way we work, and the way we interact with our producers and the priorities that we place on those, whether it's doing conservation and grazing work or whether it's irrigation, water efficiency. It's all of us together. Critical and important to that, as I shared my experiences, you help us help our people understand the environment that the agriculture producers are working in, the things they have to consider, the challenges that are facing them, so that we can be more effective conservationists. The Conservation Agriculture Mentoring Program started with Chief Lore, but it is the very thing that conservation districts did with me when I was growing up in this agency. And it shaped the way and the passion, because all conservation is local. There is so much diversity from Maine to California, and then even up and down the Great Plains that was my home and the area that I'm familiar with. Tremendous variability, and it takes local leadership like you to make a difference out there on the landscape. Y'all are important, and y'all are pivotal to us shaping a next generation of conservationists, so they are adapting to the current environment today and continue to move and address things into the future. The core of this effort is you, the local soil and water conservation district supervisors that are participating and helping us shape these 386 soil conservationists, 97 new technicians, and 51 range conservationists and 23 engineers that are enrolled in this program today to help frame themselves in their views so they can be effective when they're in the field with the agriculture producers in your district, serving your conservation needs and those of the producers. You look at the list of how many employees that we have on with less than 1 year experience, and we're growing that number. I will show you some numbers here in a minute. We're going to need that kind of engagement, that kind of shepherding and stewardship as folks move through the system, and y'all are a part of helping them. We're innovating in new areas. Urban agriculture, conservation districts have been critical in helping us stand up this effort of bringing agriculture and conservation to inside the urban community. It's not just about the farms and ranches of the United States. 75% of our land is held in private stewardship. Some of that is in urban areas, and a great capacity to produce in those areas, and y'all are a part of helping us lead that effort. In summary, we're all partners in this conservation effort, and it takes all of us together to lead. And my message to y'all today is 39 plus years of working directly with conservation districts, state conservation associations, and the NACD partnership. I think about Billy Wilson, Earl Garber, two of your previous presidents, Gene, Tim, and incoming Michael. Your leaders and the folks that have worked with me throughout my career have continued to inspire me. You continue to encourage me. You've continued to provide honest assessments of where we are so that we can shape conservation to be effective right out there on the ground where it's the most important. I just want to revisit and let you know our mission and vision that Chief Lore rolled out last year. It has not changed. These are the very things that every conservation district across this United States can fit into this, and even into the territories in the Pacific Basin. It's all enshrined in this mission and vision that gives us the flexibility to support you with your local needs and to help you deliver. Our agency priorities have remained the same. It's about the 2018 Farm Bill. It's about streamlining our processes and program delivery so we can be more effective in improving our overall customer service by doing the thing that we do best, and that's being in the field. And that's what we want to do as one of our major priorities for this year. We've been working on it for a couple of years, and we're going to continue to push on that. Mentoring the camp program, y'all are critical to that, and I want to encourage you to help us help you. And then with our focused outreach, we have so many customers and potential customers, we do not need to leave anyone behind. We need that effort. We need that support out there locally as you continue to do outreach, education, and deliver services. Help us reach all of the communities within your soil conservation district. And then Jimmy Emmons would not ever forgive me if I talked past soil health as a priority. One of y'all's great conservation leaders there in Oklahoma and a soil health champion, one of your family from across the country, he continues to lead on, and we're going to continue to develop out our staff so that they can be as comfortable talking about soil health as somebody like Jimmy Emmons, a great inspiration to me. And finally, we'll just wrap up with a few things that are kind of nuts and bolts, and that is our Farm Bill rulemaking. 2018 Farm Bill, we are now 2 years after passage, bringing those final rules across the line, have not disrupted any service, even with the COVID environment and the way we had to restructure our services. A large part of it was supported and assisted by you. We've been able to continue delivering these programs. We're going to get these final rules out, and we're going to lean in hard to be as successful as we possibly can through that locally led delivery model. Listening to you, bringing that up through the state technical committee, and shaping those conservation dollars we're putting out to the state, and letting the state conservationists work with y'all to deliver them to the priorities that you have there within each conservation district in your state. Staffing has been an issue. You've heard it a number of times. We have turned the corner, and we are now hiring. The dip there at the tail end of this graph is really about the retirements and that have gone out the door, and we expect the increase that's over to the left. We expect that surge as we're right now engaged in a direct hiring effort for approximately 1,500 new entry-level positions so that we can get our capacity back to a place that we're providing and capable of providing the services to you. I just want to close by saying that was quick. I had to run through some things, but the heart of the message is thank you. I would not be where I'm at today and have this great privilege and responsibility of leading Nrcs had it not been for the soil and water conservation districts of this United States, the conservation district leaders, their passion for addressing what they have locally and contributing even greater by membership and leadership in NACD. Y'all have been very special to me. I will always be a champion. I will always be supportive because there's no question in my mind, when we lead locally, we lead successfully. Thank you all very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you today. I appreciate this opportunity to take some time here to acknowledge the many volunteers of our Earth team and their many contributions to our collective conservation efforts. In 2020, over 15,000 volunteers working in 333 offices across this great country and the territory's Pacific Basin contributed over 135,000 hours of service. These contributions have been valued at $3.7 million worth of staff support to our collective conservation efforts, a tremendous support network and partnership that we have with the Earth team members from across the country. Today, I want to recognize from this tremendous pool of passionate volunteers, the national NACD and Nrcs Earth Team Award recipients. The recipients this year are Minnesota's Cass and Crow Wing County Soil and Water Conservation District and the Nrcs Baxter Field Office, who excelled in fulfilling our mission and commitment to customer service during this pandemic. Their demonstrated dedication, shared leadership among the district officials, the Nrcs employees, and the Earth Team volunteers lives as proof that partnering together can help us effectively and efficiently continue to impact our natural resources and the landscape of our country. Congratulations, and y'all are living proof that not one of us is as successful as all of us working together. Thank you very much, and again, congratulations.
Congratulations. I have a few announcements before we depart. On behalf of everyone here at NACD, I would like to again thank our sponsors for helping make this meeting a success. I encourage you to learn more about how these companies are helping support conservation measures across the United States. I would also like to thank our speakers. We know how valuable your time and resources are, and we are honored that you have chosen to spend your time with us to support locally led conservation. This afternoon, we have 4 breakout sessions starting at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can read the session descriptions and a list of presenters on the breakout session tab of the annual meeting platform. Also, don't forget to check out our auction tab to browse through the lots up for sale and to start bidding. The auction closes tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Join us at 4 p.m. Eastern later today for our award session, where we'll be recognizing our conservation districts and state and territory associations for their membership contributions and their leadership training programs. We will also be honoring some extraordinary individuals for their contributions to locally led conservation. Thank you for your time this morning. See you again at 4 p.m.